June 15th, 1961, 8:04 a.m.
Easy, don't
Mamie
fight us.
Johnson
No,
stopped
let me
halfway
go.
through the hallway, the coffee cup slipping slightly in her hand. The house felt wrong. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. Ruthie's bedroom door was open. That alone meant nothing. Ruth was 16. Teenagers forgot things. Teenagers rushed. But when Mamie stepped inside, her stomach dropped. The bed was made. Perfectly made. Ruth never made her bed. The window was open, the curtains breathing in and out with the morning air. And centered on the pillow, placed carefully, deliberately, was a single folded sheet of paper. Mamie unfolded it once. Then again, her scream didn't sound human. It ripped through the brownstone like shattered glass. Bumpy Johnson hit the stairs before his feet fully understood what was happening. 2 steps at a time. 3. His heart already knew the truth before his eyes confirmed it. Empty room. Open window. Note in his wife's shaking hands. Bumpy read it once. Then again, we have your daughter. $500,000 by midnight. No police. No games. Fail and she dies. The room seemed to tilt. For a brief moment, just a moment, the king of Harlem disappeared. No muscle. No reputation. No power. Just a father staring at the absence of his child. Then something behind Bumpy's eyes changed. People who knew him would later struggle to describe it. They said his face didn't twist with anger. It emptied, like a door quietly closing. At 8:05 a.m., Bumpy Johnson folded the note with surgical precision and placed it on the dresser. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from control. Lock the house, he said calmly. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Mamie tried to speak. No words came out. Bumpy kissed her forehead once, the last soft thing he would do that day, and walked out into the Harlem morning. Ruth Johnson was his only child, his one clean thing. She didn't know about the bodies, the deals, the blood that paid for her private school tuition and piano lessons. Bumpy had built a wall between his world and hers. High, thick, absolute. Someone had just climbed over it, and they hadn't just kidnapped a girl. They had declared war on a man who had ended wars. By 8:12 a.m., every payphone on 125th Street was ringing. By 8:20, men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available. By 8:37, Harlem understood something was wrong, because Bumpy Johnson was moving. And when Bumpy moved like this, people disappeared. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. They were wrong. They had 4 hours. June 15th, 1961, 8:41 a.m. Mamie Johnson stopped halfway through the hallway. Didn't start with threats. The coffee cup slipping slightly in her hand. He sat in the back of a black Cadillac, rolling slow through Harlem. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. Hands folded, listening. Ruthie's bedroom door was always talked. That alone, you just had to know how to hear it. Ruth was 16. Pause too long. Teenagers forgot too tight. Fear changed the rhythm of city. But when Mamie stepped inside, her stomach was out. The bed was made. Felt perfectly something made. Precious had been taken. Ruth never made her bed. The first stop the was window was open on Lenox Avenue. The curtains breathing in and out with the morning air. Information. And 3 men inside stopped breathing. Placed carefully. Bumpy stepped in. Deliberately. Razors froze was a single mid-air. Folded sheet no of paper. No one leaves. Mamie Bumpy said softly. Once. No then one again, did. Her he didn't scream ask about didn't sound human. That would have been useless. It ripped through the brownstone. He asked a better question. Like shattered glass. Who's been spending Bumpy money? Bumpy Johnson hit the stairs before his barber swallowed. Fully understood 2 weeks back what was happening. Some boys 2 steps at a time. Flashy. His heart already knew the truth. Too clean. Before his eyes names came fast after Empty room. Names open always window. Did. Note by 9:12 a.m. Bumpy had Bumpy read it once. By 9:18 again. The list we have your daughter. The Cadillac $500,000. Next came the numbers houses. No police. Then the clubs. No games. Then the back stairwells where men whispered deals seemed to no one important would ever hear. For a brief moment, just a moment, didn't raise the king of Harlem disappeared. He didn't no muscle. Fear no reputation. At 9:44 a.m., just a father staring at the absence of a warehouse near the east. Then something behind Bumpy's eyes changed. Rent paid in cash.
Busy day, gentlemen?
No paid
Always is. You next?
Bumpy saw his face didn't twist. Still no violence. Not yet. because Bumpy Johnson quietly closing. Didn't destroy cities. At 8:05 a.m., he carved them open. Bumpy Johnson folded the note. 10:03 a.m. and placed it on the dresser. Cadillac stopped 2 blocks. His hands were shaking. Bumpy stepped out alone. From control. Inside, locked 3 men were playing cards. He said calmly, laughing. Don't answer the phone. Relaxed. Don't open the door when they saw who stood in the doorway. Mamie tried to reach for a gun. No words came out. He never finished the motion. Bumpy kissed her forehead. The room stayed quiet as Bumpy looked down at the body. Thing he would do that day. At the other 2, and walked out into the Harlem morning. You took a child, he said. Ruth Johnson, that's not business. Was his only child. That's suicide. His one clean thing. They talked. She didn't know about the bodies, not about Ruth. The deals. They hadn't seen the blood that paid for. But they gave him something better and piano lessons. Bumpy had built a wall between his world and hers. A man who thought he was smarter than Harlem. Thick, absolute. By 10:31 a.m., someone had just climbed over. The middleman was in a chair, and they hadn't just kidnapped bleeding from places that didn't show. They had declared war on Bumpy a man who had ended wars. Others did. By 8:12 a.m., where every payphone on 125th Street was daughter. By man cried. Men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available. Abandoned. By 8:37, the kidnappers had moved Ruth at dawn because they thought Johnson was moving safety. And when Bumpy moved like this at 10:48 a.m., disappeared. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. They expected panic. They had what they heard instead froze their blood. You have until noon, Bumpy said. After that, I stopped looking. The line went dead because when Bumpy Johnson stopped looking, he started ending.
You know why
June 15th, 1961. 8:10 a.m. Mamie Johnson stopped halfway through the hallway. A place where miracles the coffee happened. Cup slipping slightly. It looked like a place hand. Where hope went to die. The house felt quietly. 2 burned-out buildings. The kind of quiet broken windows boarded with old campaign posters. Ruthie's bedroom door. Churches abandoned by both. That alone meant nothing. Bumpy Johnson stood across the street. Teenagers forgot things. Hands in his coat pockets. But when Mamie stepped inside, he didn't. Stomach dropped. Men rushed when they were afraid. Perfectly made. Waited. Ruth inside, never made her bed. Ruth Johnson sat on a window was open, wrist tied, but loose enough not in and out with the morning. They hadn't hurt her, and set it on the pillow. The kidnappers were professionals, deliberately thought they were. Was a single folded sheet of paper. No panic. Mamie unfolded business. Once. That was their second mistake. Her scream. Their first was thinking money was the goal. It ripped through the at 11:07 a.m. Like shattered glass. Bumpy sent 2 men around Johnson hit the stairs. Another through the alley. Fully stayed where he was visible. Letting anyone watching know exactly who had arrived. His heart already knew the truth. It's the way breathing changes when a man realizes his plan is open failed. Window. The door and his wife's shaking. A kid came out first. Bumpy read it older than 22. Then again, hands shaking so bad the gun rattled. $500,000 by midnight. Bumpy took one step forward. No games. You're already talking. Fail and she dies. You're just late. Seemed to tilt. The shot echoed louder than just a moment. People nearby disappeared, but no one ran. Muscle. Not when they recognized the silhouette in the street. Just inside the staring at the absence of his child. Men then something behind Bumpy's eyes shouted. Changed. Someone people prayed. Who knew him would that later was when Bumpy walked in. They said his face didn't twist with anger. He looked at faces emptied, one like by one. Quietly because closing. Guilt leaves fingerprints. At 8:05 a.m. He found a leader near the back. Bumpy Johnson folded the note with surgical trying to bargain with his eyes and placed it on the dresser. Don't kill me. His hands were shaking. The man said quickly, not from fear. You need me. From control. Bumpy nodded once. Lock the house. You're right, he said calmly. He said, don't answer the phone. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Screams Mamie tried to speak. Bumpy crossed no words came out. She looked up at him. Bumpy kissed her eyes wide but dry. The last soft thing he would do always that day. Brave. And walked out into the Harlem morning. Bumpy Ruth Johnson was cutting her restraints himself. His one clean thing. The same hand Harlem feared. The deals. Again. Not blood that paid for her private school tuition. Close your eyes. Lessons, he said softly. Bumpy had built a wall between his world and the rest of the room. Didn't get that mercy. Thick, by 11:23 someone had just climbed over. The basement was quiet and they hadn't just kidnapped the girl. Too quiet. They had declared war on his coat around Ruth's shoulders and walked her out into the daylight. 8:12 a.m. No sirens. Every payphone on 125th Street was ringing. Harlem had already chosen its side. Men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available and told his driver to take her straight home. Harlem understood something was wrong. No stops. Because Bumpy Johnson was moving. Are you coming? And when Bumpy moved like this, Bumpy smiled. People disappeared. I'll be right behind you. The kidnappers thought they had watched the car disappear. They were wrong. His face hardened. They had 4 hours. Because this wasn't over. Someone had planned this, financed it, approved it, and that someone still thought midnight mattered. At 11:31 a.m., Bumpy Johnson began the part of the day Harlem would remember. Not the rescue, the reckoning. June 15, 1961, 11:34 a.m. Mamie Johnson stopped halfway through the hallway. The kidnappers. The coffee cup already slightly in her hand. He chased the men who allowed it. The house felt wrong. Power was never too about quiet. Trigger. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. About who felt safe enough to believe bedroom touch what belonged to you. That alone Bumpy stood on the sidewalk. Ruth was watching smoke drift from a teenager forgot things and made a decision that would ripple through Harlem for years. But when Mamie stepped inside, everyone who knew would her stomach dropped. Everyone who helped bed was made. Everyone who thought about it would remember Ruth never made her bed and choose. The window was open. The first name came from breathing in and out on 133rd Street, and he hadn't kidnapped anyone. Placed hadn't even met Ruth. Deliberate, but he'd heard the idea. Was a single folded sheet of paper. That was enough. Mamie unfolded by 12:02 p.m. Then again, the bookmaker's scream didn't sound human. Permanently, it ripped no brownstone like shattered bodies. Just an Bumpy Johnson space where a man used to exist. Fully understood what was happening. A driver who rented the van without asking his questions already knew the truth before his neighbors heard crying. Empty room. Then nothing. Open window. Harlem understood note in his wife's shaking This wasn't rage. Bumpy read it bookkeeping. Then by 12:47 we have your daughter. Phone stopped $500,000 door by midnight. Men who spent their lives chasing Bumpy's approval fail, and she dies. Suddenly prayed not to be noticed. Seemed to tilt. At 1:05 p.m., just a moment, Bumpy sat alone in his office, Harlem disappeared, removing his coat. No muscle, blood stained no reputation. He didn't bother. No power. Just a father hesitated in the doorway. Of his child. They're asking something behind Bumpy's eyes. The man said, "People who knew him would later struggle to describe it." He replied. They said his face didn't twist with anger. He leaned back like a door closing quietly closing because it could still see 8:05 a.m. Still hear Bumpy Johnson folded the note small tremor when she said "Daddy" and placed it on the dresser. The sound she didn't make. His hands were shaking. That was the sound that sealed fate. From control. By 1:42 p.m. Word reached the kidnappers. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door for anyone but legitimate fronts. Mamie tried to speak. Far from Harlem. No words came out. Bumpy kissed her forehead once. Bumpy the last soft thing he would do that day. At 2:11 walked p.m. out into the Harlem. One of them tried Ruth to flee Johnson. The city. Was his he didn't make it past the George Washington one clean Bridge. Thing. No announcement. She didn't know about the body. No message. The deals. Just absence. The blood that afternoon. Private school Harlem tuition changed its and rules. Piano lessons. Children were Bumpy suddenly had built a wall between his world and hers. Untouchable. High. Sacred. Because everyone now remembered someone had just climbed over it. By 3 p.m., they hadn't just kidnapped Bumpy finally returned home. They had declared war on a man was asleep on the couch, ended wars, wrapped in a blanket. By 8:12 a.m., resting on Mamie's lap. Every payphone television on 125th Street was ringing. Forgotten. By 8:20, Bumpy stood in the doorway. Men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available, protecting. By 8:37, when Mamie looked up, Harlem understood something was wrong. She didn't need answers. Bumpy Johnson was moving. Is it over? And when Bumpy moved, Bumpy nodded. People disappeared. He said. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. Harlem held its breath. They were wrong. Because legends aren't born from what you take. They're born from what no one ever dares to take again. June 15, 1961, 8:04 a.m. Harlem. Mamie Johnson stopped halfway through the hallway. Not calmer. The coffee cup slipping slightly in her hand. The street still buzzed. The house felt music wrong. Still drifted from open windows. The kind of quiet that presses still played stickball in the alley. Ruthie's bedroom door underneath was open. It all was a new that alone meant nothing. Passed without Ruth words. Was 16. A line teenagers forgot things. Men who teenagers rushed now spoke. But when carefully. Mamie stepped inside, names weren't her thrown stomach around. Dropped. Jokes died halfway through sentences. Perfectly made. Because everyone knew what had happened in 4 hours. The window was and more open. Importantly, the curtains breathing in and out. Bumpy Johnson had not paid the ransom. And centered on the pillow. He had paid something placed else. Carefully. At 6:17 p.m. was a messenger from downtown. Arrived. Mamie unfolded it once. Clean suit. Then again, clean hands. Her scream didn't sound nervous human. Eyes. It ripped kind of brownstone who like usually didn't climb Harlem stoops. Bumpy Johnson hit the stairs before his feet. Inside were apologies. What was happening? Promises. 2 steps at a time. An assurance that nothing like his heart ever already knew the truth. Bumpy before his eyes confirmed it. He placed the envelope on the table, open window, pushed it back. Note in his wife's shaking hand. He said evenly. Bumpy read it once. This was their warning. Then again, the messenger nodded too fast. And left $500,000 upstairs. No Ruth police. Woke as Bumpy sat at the edge of her bed. Fail and she died. Smelled like safety. The room seemed to tilt. Like home. For a brief moment, trouble? Just a moment. Quietly. The king Bumpy of Harlem disappeared. A real one. No muscle. No reputation. You were brave. No power. She just nodded. A father satisfied with the absence of his child. Kids. Then something behind Bumpy's eyes drifted back to sleep. People Bumpy who knew him would later struggle watching the rise and fall. They said his face didn't counting it like time owed. It empty. That night. Like a
Harlem
door
told the story
quietly
wrong
closing.
on purpose.
At
They said
8:05
Bumpy killed a
a.m.,
dozen men.
Bumpy Johnson
bodies
folded the
filled the
note
river.
with surgical precision.
They said the Bronx
and placed it
burned.
on the dresser.
None of that was
His
true.
hands were shaking.
The truth was
not from
scarier.
fear.
The truth
from
was that
control.
by midnight,
Lock the
the
house.
deadline in the note,
He said calmly.
the city had already
Don't answer
decided.
the phone. No
Don't
one
open
would
the door
ever
for
touch
anyone
Bumpy
but
Johnson's
me.
family again.
Mamie tried
not
to speak.
because of how many men
No
he
words
killed,
came out,
but because
Bumpy
of how
kissed her
efficiently
forehead
he
once.
erased the idea.
The last
Years
soft
later,
thing he would do that day,
old-timers would
and
lower
walked
their
out into the
voices
Harlem morning
and tell kids
Ruth
why
Johnson
some rules
was
never
his
changed.
only child.
Why
His
women
one clean
and
thing.
children were left alone.
She didn't know about the
why
bodies,
certain lines were
the
never
deals,
crossed.
the
And
blood
they'd
that
say,
paid for her private
because
school
once
tuition
someone
and
forgot.
piano lessons.
At 11:59
Bumpy had built
p.m.,
a wall between his world
Bumpy
and hers.
stood by his window,
high,
looking out at
thick,
Harlem one
absolute.
last time that day.
Someone had just
Lights
climbed
blinked.
over it.
And
Life
they hadn't just
continued.
kidnapped the girl.
He folded the ransom
They had
note
declared war on a
carefully
man who
and
had dropped it
ended
into the
wars.
fire.
By
The paper burned
8:12
fast.
a.m., the message
Every
didn't.
payphone on 125th Street was ringing. By 8:20, men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available. By 8:37, Harlem understood something was wrong because Bumpy Johnson was moving. And when Bumpy moved like this, people disappeared. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. They were wrong. They had 4 hours. June 15, 1961, 8:04 a.m. People
Mamie
would argue
Johnson
about the
stopped
details.
halfway through the hallway.
They always did.
The coffee cup
Some
slipping
said was
slightly
4
in her
hours.
hand.
Others
The house
swore it
felt
was
wrong.
less. Too
Some
quiet.
claimed Bumpy
The
Johnson,
kind of quiet
had
that
known
presses
exactly
against
where his
your
daughter
ears.
was the whole time.
Ruthie's bedroom
Others
door was
insisted
open.
he had torn the
That
city
alone
apart
meant
piece by
nothing.
piece
Ruth
until
was
Harlem
16.
itself gave her back.
Teenagers forgot
The
things.
arguments didn't matter.
Teenagers rushed.
because no one
But when
argued
Mamie
about
stepped
the outcome.
inside,
After
her
June
stomach
15th,
dropped.
1961,
The bed was made.
A rule settled
Perfectly
over
made.
Harlem like gravity.
Ruth never made
Invisible,
her bed.
absolute,
The window was
unquestioned.
open.
The
You don't
curtains
touch a man's
breathing in
family.
and out with the
And
morning
you
air.
never touch Bumpy
and centered on the
Johnsons.
pillow.
Ruth Johnson
Placed
grew up.
carefully.
She went back to
deliberately.
school.
Was a
Played
single
piano,
folded sheet of paper.
argued with her mother.
Mamie unfolded
rolled
it
her
once.
eyes at her father.
Then again,
like any
her
other
scream
teenager,
didn't sound
to the
human.
outside
It
world.
ripped through the brownstone.
Nothing about her life
like
looked
shattered
different.
glass. But Harlem
Bumpy
watched
Johnson
her
hit the
differently.
stairs before
Shopkeepers
his feet
remembered her
fully
name.
understood.
What was
Drivers
happening.
slowed when she
2
crossed
steps
the
at a
street.
time.
Men
3,
who'd done terrible
his heart
things
already knew
suddenly
the truth
found religion
before his eyes
walked
confirmed
by.
it.
Empty
Not out
room.
of kindness.
Open window.
Out of memory.
Note in his
Bumpy
wife's
never
shaking
spoke
hands.
about that day.
Bumpy
Not
read
to
his
his
friends.
Then
Not
again,
to his enemies.
we have your daughter.
Not even to himself.
$500,000
He treated it like a debt
by
already
midnight.
paid. No police.
Page already turned.
No games.
But
Fail
sometimes,
and she dies.
late at night,
The room
he'd sit
seemed to
alone
tilt.
and stare at nothing.
For a brief moment,
And
just
those
a
who
moment,
knew him well
the
understood
king of
why.
Harlem disappeared.
Because power meant
no
nothing if it
muscle,
couldn't protect
no
what mattered.
reputation.
Harlem
No
didn't
power.
fear Bumpy.
Just a
because
father
he was
staring
violent.
at the absence of
They
his child.
feared him because he was
Then something
precise.
behind Bumpy's
Because
eyes
when something was
changed.
taken from him,
People who
he didn't
knew him would
explode.
later struggle to describe
He
it.
corrected the mistake.
They said his face
Years
didn't twist
passed.
with anger.
Empires shifted.
Emptied. New
Like a
names
door
tried to rise.
quietly closing.
Some succeeded.
At 8:05
Most didn't.
a.m., but no one,
Bumpy Johnson
not
folded
once,
the note with
ever
surgical
tried again.
precision,
And that was
placed
the
it on the
real
dresser.
legacy of those 4
His
hours.
hands were shaking.
Not the bodies.
Not from fear.
Not the blood.
From control.
The restraint.
Lock the house.
Understanding that
He
there are
said
lines
calmly.
so fine.
Don't answer the phone.
So absolute.
Don't open the door
that
for
crossing
anyone
them
but
doesn't
me.
start a war.
Mamie
It
tried
ends
to speak.
one.
Old
No
men would
words
sit
came
outside
out.
barbershops
Bumpy
decades
kissed her
later,
forehead once,
shaking their heads.
the last soft
telling
thing
the
he would do
story
that
to
day,
kids who didn't
and
believe
walked
Harlem
out
had
into the
ever
Harlem
been that
morning.
dangerous.
Ruth Johnson,
And they'd
was his
say,
only child.
"See that girl in the
His
photograph?
one clean thing. That was
She
Bumpy
didn't know about
Johnson's
the
daughter.
bodies.
The
And that's why he
deals,
went home safe.
The blood that paid for
On
her
June
private school
15th,
tuition
1961,
and piano lessons.
Harlem
Bumpy
learned
had
something
built a
it
wall
never
between his
forgot.
world and hers.
Some men rule through
High,
fear.
thick,
Others through
absolute.
money.
But
Someone
the most
had just
dangerous
climbed
men of
over it.
all,
And
they
they
hadn't just
ruled through
kidnapped a
memory.
girl.
And
They had
memory
declared
doesn't
war on a
forget.
man who had ended wars. By 8:12 a.m., every payphone on 125th Street was ringing. By 8:20, men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available. By 8:37, Harlem understood something was wrong because Bumpy Johnson was moving. And when Bumpy moved like this, people disappeared. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. They were wrong. They had 4 hours. June 15, 1961, 8:04
If stories
a.m.
of power, loyalty,
Mamie
and betrayal
Johnson stopped
interest
halfway
you,
through the hallway.
then you already
The
belong
coffee
here.
cup slipping slightly
Subscribe
in her
to stay
hand.
close to the truth.
The house felt wrong.
And comment
Too
below
quiet.
the
What
kind
would you
of
have done in
quiet
this
that
place?
presses against your ears.
Because every legend
Ruthie's
leaves a
bedroom
lesson.
door was open,
And not
that
everyone is built
alone
to
meant
survive
nothing.
it.
Ruth was 16. Teenagers forgot things. Teenagers rushed. But when Mamie
Amy stepped inside. Her stomach dropped. The bed was made. Perfectly made. Ruth never made her bed. The window was open, the curtains breathing in and out with the morning air. And centered on the pillow, placed carefully, deliberately, was a single folded sheet of paper. Mamie unfolded it once. Then again, her scream didn't sound human. It ripped through the brownstone like shattered glass. Bumpy Johnson hit the stairs before his feet fully understood what was happening. 2 steps at a time. 3. His heart already knew the truth before his eyes confirmed it. Empty room. Open window. Note in his wife's shaking hands. Bumpy read it once. Then again, we have your daughter. $500,000 by midnight. No police. No games. Fail and she dies. The room seemed to tilt. For a brief moment, just a moment, the king of Harlem disappeared. No muscle. No reputation. No power. Just a father staring at the absence of his child. Then something behind Bumpy's eyes changed. People who knew him would later struggle to describe it. They said his face didn't twist with anger. It emptied, like a door quietly closing. At 8:05 a.m., Bumpy Johnson folded the note with surgical precision and placed it on the dresser. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from control. Lock the house, he said calmly. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Mamie tried to speak. No words came out. Bumpy kissed her forehead once, the last soft thing he would do that day, and walked out into the Harlem morning. Ruth Johnson was his only child, his one clean thing. She didn't know about the bodies, the deals, the blood that paid for her private school tuition and piano lessons. Bumpy had built a wall between his world and hers. High, thick, absolute. Someone had just climbed over it, and they hadn't just kidnapped a girl. They had declared war on a man who had ended wars. By 8:12 a.m., every payphone on 125th Street was ringing. By 8:20, men who hadn't spoken to Bumpy in years were suddenly available. By 8:37, Harlem understood something was wrong, because Bumpy Johnson was moving. And when Bumpy moved like this, people disappeared. The kidnappers thought they had until midnight. They were wrong. They had 4 hours.